mentioned, I think maybe I was joking yesterday in our live stream. I'm like, God bless Tim Kawakami. And it's 'cause Tim Kawakami is literally single-handedly propping up, the Niner offseason with some of his revelations in the last 24 hours and creating content that the rest of us get to chew on. And now I understand now kind of the outsider's point of view when people are like, oh, I'm waiting for something to break. Without the Niners being in this thing, without media availability, it's very difficult to get information this time of year. But Tim had a revelation that came out yesterday. You already referenced it, and it was on the Brock Purdy contract extension. And I thought there was three little nuggets in this thing. One was Niners and Purdy's camp feel like there will not be fireworks on the way to an eventual deal, which is great news, right? Because there was always a chance they would have ridiculously contradictory type offers and never be able to get on the same page even to start. So that kind of alleviates that concern. But then he also says that the framework might be a little different, and we kind of hit that. I've got a couple more questions about that. But then he finishes up and it could be a shorter term deal. It could be a lesser guaranteed deal, like you were suggesting earlier this offseason. It finishes by saying, though, it might take time. And that's the ominous phrase, because that is what the Niners don't have. I know we've talked about this a lot, Chase, but the more I'm seeing this 49er offseason picture, I think I want to amend my prediction on this. I was saying, hey, look, it's vitally important that the Niners get this done with Brock around the draft. And now I'm thinking, you know what? No, I've missed the boat on that. When I see guys like T. Higgins out there, and the Niners talking about maybe being a surprise bidder for him, they need to get the Brock Purdy thing buttoned up, signed, sealed, and delivered by March 12th when free agency begins, so they can start making offers, to maybe one or two free agents that they really covet, knowing that they got the Purdy deal, their biggest contract, done. I mean, do you look at March 12th as kind of as a deadline for the Purdy thing? Because it might take time could be the worst phrase I think any Niner after the Ayuk thing. I don't want to hear about it. It might take time.
Yeah, and it's not just the Ayuk thing. It was Ayuk, it was Bosa, it was Debo. And so for the last few off seasons, I think 5 in a row, the Niners have signed their own homegrown players to contract extensions. It started with Fred Warner in 2021, George Kittle in 2022, Debo Samuel it was Fred Warner, George Kittle 2020, Fred Warner 2021, Debo Samuel 2022, Nick Bosa 2023, Brandon Ayuk 2024, now Brock Purdy here in 2025. Yeah, so I do think it's important to get this done before free agency for a couple of reasons. For prospective free agents, they know what they're walking into and what the quarterback situation is going to be. That's important for a player like T. Higgins. For the Niners, they'll have a better understanding of what their cap situation is going to be. And then if you get that deal done by the start of free agency, that means that Brock Purdy is going to be on hand for OTAs. He's going to be there for mandatory minicamp, and we don't have to worry about the drama lingering and dragging on, carrying over in the training camp. The Niners need to learn their lesson. I know that they have waited often to get these contract extensions done with these players who they have drafted and developed, but last year we saw it with Ayuk. We saw it with Trent Williams as well. We saw it with Christian McCaffrey, different circumstances. But when you let these things linger on, there is a little bit of drama that does ensue. And there is a little bit of a dark cloud that hovers over your organization because players are looking around and they're like, are we going to get this deal done with Brandon Ayuk? Are we going to get this deal done with Trent Williams? And then they end up not doing anything throughout all of training camp. Nothing in the preseason, and then you're trying to scrap things together starting week 1 when football is a game about synergy, camaraderie, continuity, timing, especially on the offensive side of the football. So when the Niners signed Jimmy Garoppolo to that contract after they traded for him, they got that done February 8th, I think. It was about the first or second week of February. I don't think, based upon the reporting from Tim Kawakami, how things have gone up to this point, and some of the money that's going to be at play, some of the negotiating that we're going to see, that the deal is going to get done by then. I don't think it's going to be over the next week and a half. I do think, hopefully, that this deal done is done, in the lead up to free agency. And for those not familiar, like Kawakami said a couple of interesting things that you pointed to, Larry, and one of them, and a couple of them, I'll just read them off here. 49ers fans don't seem to be too worried about this negotiation. I think that's an accurate take. This probably will get done, but the timing is important too. The Niners and Purdy don't want this stretching into OTAs and minicamp, forcing Purdy to make a decision on whether or not to skip those sessions, hold in, or whatever. So I think that's great that both sides are in agreement that we don't want this carrying over into OTA's minicamp. So that goes back to that deadline that you're talking about of getting this done by free agency in March. And then Kawakami said, I heard from a plugged-in NFL source this week that the Niners and Purdy's camp are indeed feeling like there won't be fireworks on the way to an eventual deal. That's, of course, a positive. I've also heard generally that the framework might be a little different than some of these other recent quarterback deals. I suspect this means the Niners could be pitching a shorter term, lesser guaranteed deal compared to the full commitment deal signed by Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, and others over the years. And that kind of fits what I've been saying here over the last couple of months. Everybody talks about the market, the market, the market. Just because the market is what it is, and just because other teams have fallen into the trap of the market being what it is, doesn't mean the Niners have to make the same mistake. I don't know if Jacksonville is fully convinced they made the right decision on Trevor Lawrence. I don't think the Miami Dolphins are convinced that that contract is worth it for Tua Tagovailoa. Look at how Jordan Love ended the year. He's making $50+ million, and you don't know what he is going into 2025. And so with the way that Purdy played this past year, I get it. It wasn't easy around him. So many injuries. Kyle Shanahan didn't have his best year. Purdy didn't have his best year. But I don't think that you just say, oh, the market is the market. Brock, here's $60+ million. You tinker with the guaranteed money. You tinker with the years, because if you have a misstep here, if you give them the wrong deal, that sets you back even further, and you're already in a precarious spot with an older and expensive roster.
Who do you think, if it could be everybody, they could all be in agreement, right? When I say everybody, I mean, Lynch and Shanahan, maybe the Niner ownership, maybe Brock's representative, Kyle Strong. And who do you think's pushing for the short-term lesser guarantee? Because I was thinking about this. Initially, I was like, this might be good for Brock because he's coming off of a year where he wasn't great. And if he really does believe in himself, he might be able to reset the market and get another big payday in a short amount of time. So maybe Kyle Strongen could be pushing for it. It could also be, Shanahan and Lynch, who are all in on Purdy being their quarterback as long as they're here. But it also, what if the Niners, win 5 games and 6 games and 3 games in the next 3 years, or the next couple of years, and they want to say goodbye to Shanahan and Lynch? Well, now that you got to attract a new football czar, maybe a new head coach. And if you have a quarterback, odds are if they win 3 games or 5 games or 6 games in any of these years, probably Brock isn't going to be considered the guy. I have a hard time believing he's going to be awesome, but they're going to win 5 games. Yeah. So do you think the Niner ownership could be in favor of pushing a shorter term deal so that they could move off of Shanahan and Lynch, God forbid, at some point? I know Niner fans don't want to hear that. But do you think that this short-term deal is about not just Purdy, but organizational flexibility to attract the next head coach and GM if this 1-year backslide becomes a 2 or 3 or 4-year backslide? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's being pushed by the Niners if it is a short-term contract. I think that anytime you're the agent or the player, you're looking for guaranteed money. You're looking for a long-term deal, because regardless of whether or not it works out or not, you know that you have that financial commitment secured, and you know that you're going to be compensated. For the Niners, though, they have any uncertainties about Brock Purdy, and he's had a couple of arm injuries, and the play without an ideal supporting cast in 2024 was a little bit spotty. I think the short-term contract is the best play for San Francisco, and I think they're pushing it. They can have a high average annual value, but if it's a shorter-term contract and the guaranteed money is less, the AAV doesn't really mean all that much.